Catalina Island, California. November 29th, 1980, 1:30 a.m. on a cold Sunday morning. 40 miles off the coast of Los Angeles, the 60-foot yacht Splendor rocks gently in the dark Pacific waters. On board are 4 people: actor Robert Wagner, his wife, actress Natalie Wood, their friend and fellow actor Christopher Walken, and the boat's captain Dennis Davern. In 6 hours, one of them will be dead. The others will carry a secret that will haunt them for the rest of their lives. And Christopher Walken will find himself at the center of one of Hollywood's most enduring mysteries, fighting to clear his name while protecting the truth about what really happened that night. This is the story that Hollywood tried to bury, the dark secret that nearly destroyed Christopher Walken's career before it really began. The night that changed everything, and the 42 years of silence that followed. But to understand what happened on the Splendor, we need to go back 3 months earlier to a film set where the seeds of tragedy were being planted. August 1981, the Universal Studios backlot. The cast and crew of Brainstorm are shooting what everyone hopes will be a groundbreaking science fiction thriller. The film stars Natalie Wood and Christopher Walken as researchers who develop a device that can record human experiences and play them back directly into another person's mind. Natalie Wood is 43 years old and one of the most famous actresses in the world. A child star who successfully transitioned to adult roles, she's made classics like Rebel Without a Cause, West Side Story, and Splendor in the Grass. She's married to Robert Wagner, a fellow actor, and they're considered one of Hollywood's golden couples. Christopher Walken is 38 and still climbing the ladder. His Oscar-winning performance in The Deer Hunter has established him as a serious, dramatic actor, but he's not yet a household name. Brainstorm represents a chance to work with A-list talent and prove he can carry a major studio picture. From the beginning, the chemistry between Wood and Walken is electric. Not romantic necessarily, but a deep artistic connection. They're both perfectionists who take their craft seriously. They spend hours discussing their characters' motivations, working through scenes together, pushing each other to find deeper truths in the material. But there's something else happening between them. Something that makes Robert Wagner increasingly uncomfortable. Wagner visits the set frequently, ostensibly to support his wife, but really to keep an eye on her growing friendship with Christopher Walken. He watches them laugh together between takes. He sees the way they look at each other during emotionally intense scenes. He notices that Natalie talks about Christopher constantly when she comes home from filming. There was definitely tension. Remembers a crew member who was on set that summer. You could feel it whenever Wagner showed up. The whole atmosphere would change. The tension comes to a head during the filming of a particularly intimate scene where Walken and Wood's characters share a breakthrough moment with their experimental technology. The scene requires them to be emotionally vulnerable with each other, to create the illusion of minds connecting across space and time. Director Douglas Trumbull calls for multiple takes, trying to capture the perfect moment. Each time, Walken and Wood go deeper, finding new layers in their performances. The chemistry is undeniable, and everyone on set can see it. Everyone, including Robert Wagner, who watches from behind the cameras with growing anger. After the 7th take, Wagner approaches Christopher Walken privately. "I don't like what I'm seeing," he says quietly. "What do you mean?" Walken replies, genuinely confused. "You know exactly what I mean. Stay away from my wife." Christopher Walken is caught off guard by the accusation. He's been nothing but professional with Natalie Wood. They're friends, yes, but that's all. The connection Wagner is seeing is artistic, not romantic. "There's nothing inappropriate happening," Walken says. "Just keep it that way," Wagner replies, walking away. But the damage is done. A seed of suspicion has been planted that will grow into something deadly over the next 3 months. As filming continues, the relationship between the 3 actors becomes increasingly strained. Wagner becomes more possessive of his wife, showing up on set unannounced, monitoring her conversations, creating an atmosphere of surveillance and control. Natalie Wood confides in Christopher Walken about her marriage problems. She tells him that Wagner has always been jealous, that his insecurity has gotten worse as he's aged, that she sometimes feels trapped in her own life. "I feel like I'm suffocating," she tells Walken during a break between scenes. "I love Robert, but I need space to be myself. I need friends. I need artistic challenges. I can't live in a box just to make him feel secure. Christopher Walken listens sympathetically, but he's careful not to encourage her complaints. He's been through one difficult marriage himself, and he knows how dangerous it can be to get involved in other people's relationship problems. But his very presence in Natalie Wood's life has become a threat to Robert Wagner's sense of control. And Wagner is not the kind of man who handles threats well. October 1981. Filming wraps on Brainstorm, but the tensions that developed during production haven't resolved. If anything, they've gotten worse. Wagner's jealousy has metastasized into something approaching paranoia. He's convinced that Christopher Walken is trying to steal his wife. He has no evidence of this because it's not actually happening, but his imagination has filled in the gaps. Every conversation between Walken and Wood becomes a secret romantic rendezvous in his mind. Every professional collaboration becomes an emotional affair. Natalie Wood, caught between her husband's insecurity and her friendship with Christopher Walken, tries to maintain relationships with both men. But it's an impossible balance. Wagner demands that she cut off contact with Walken entirely. She refuses. "Christopher is my friend," she tells her husband. "We work together on an important film. I'm not going to pretend that relationship doesn't exist just because you're uncomfortable with it." The fight escalates over several weeks. Wagner gives Natalie an ultimatum. Choose between him and Christopher Walken. She chooses neither, or rather, she chooses both. She won't abandon her marriage, but she won't abandon her friendship either. This is when Wagner comes up with his plan. November 26th, 1981, Thanksgiving Day. Wagner calls Christopher Walken with a surprising invitation. "Natalie and I are taking the boat out to Catalina for the weekend," he says. "We'd love for you to join us. Just the three of us, a chance to relax and put all this tension behind us." Christopher Walken is hesitant. The last few months have been increasingly uncomfortable, and he's not sure spending a weekend on a boat with the Wagners is a good idea. But Wagner is insistent. "Look, I know things have been weird between us," Wagner says. "That's my fault. I was jealous and paranoid, and I took it out on you. This weekend is my way of making amends. We're all adults. We should be able to be friends." Against his better judgment, Christopher Walken agrees. He doesn't know that Wagner has been planning this weekend for weeks. He doesn't know that Wagner sees this as his chance to resolve the Christopher Walken problem once and for all. Friday, November 27th. The Splendor sets sail from Marina del Rey with its 4 passengers: Wagner, Wood, Walken, and Captain Dennis Davern. The mood is artificially jovial, everyone working hard to pretend that nothing is wrong. But something is wrong. Something has been wrong for months, and being trapped on a boat together isn't going to fix it. The first day passes without incident. They sail to Catalina, drop anchor in a secluded cove, and try to relax. Natalie Wood seems genuinely happy to be away from the pressures of Hollywood. Christopher Walken enjoys the peace and quiet. Even Robert Wagner appears to be making an effort to be friendly. But that night, after dinner and several bottles of wine, the real purpose of the trip becomes clear. Wagner starts asking Christopher Walken pointed questions about his relationship with Natalie. At first, the questions seem casual, just conversation among friends. But gradually, they become more aggressive, more accusatory. "You spend a lot of time thinking about my wife," Wagner says. "We're friends," Walken replies. "We worked together. Is that all?" Of course that's all. What else would it be? But Wagner isn't satisfied with these answers. He's been building this confrontation in his mind for months, and he's determined to have it out. Saturday, November 28th. The tension on the boat is palpable. Natalie Wood tries to play peacemaker, but she's fighting a losing battle. Wagner's jealousy has reached a breaking point, and Christopher Walken is beginning to realize that he's been lured into a trap. That evening, they go ashore to the restaurant at the Catalina Casino. Wagner orders bottle after bottle of wine, and his behavior becomes increasingly erratic. He makes snide comments about Christopher Walken's career, his personal life, his character. He accuses him of being manipulative, predatory, untrustworthy. Christopher Walken tries to defuse the situation, but every word he says only makes Wagner angrier. Natalie Wood is mortified by her husband's behavior, but her attempts to calm him down are interpreted as taking Walken's side. The evening ends with Wagner storming out of the restaurant, leaving Natalie and Christopher to find their own way back to the boat. When they arrive, Wagner is waiting for them, drunk and furious. "I knew it," he says. "I fucking knew it. You two couldn't wait to get rid of me." "Robert, stop," Natalie pleads. "We just came back to the boat. Nothing happened." But Wagner is beyond reason. He's convinced that he's caught them in some kind of romantic betrayal, even though all they did was finish their dinner and take a water taxi back to the yacht. The fight continues for hours. Wagner accuses Christopher Walken of trying to steal his wife. Walken denies it. Natalie tries to mediate. The boat's captain, Dennis Davern, stays out of it, uncomfortable with the domestic drama unfolding around him. Finally, around midnight, everyone goes to their respective cabins. The boat falls silent, except for the gentle lapping of waves against the hull. But Robert Wagner isn't done. Sunday, November 29th, 1:30 a.m. Christopher Walken is woken by shouting from the deck above. He recognizes Robert Wagner's voice, loud and slurred with alcohol. He can't make out the words, but the tone is unmistakably angry. Then he hears Natalie Wood's voice, pleading, trying to calm her husband down. Then more shouting. Then a sound that will haunt Christopher Walken for the rest of his life. A splash. He rushes to the deck and finds Robert Wagner standing at the rail, looking down at the dark water. Natalie Wood is nowhere to be seen. "Where is she?" Walken demands. Wagner turns around, and the expression on his face is one Christopher Walken will never forget. Not grief, not panic, something else. Something that looks almost like satisfaction. "She fell," Wagner says simply. But Christopher Walken knows that's not what happened. The pieces fall into place in an instant. Wagner's escalating jealousy, the planned weekend trip, the confrontation, and now this. "We have to call for help," Walken says. "She's a good swimmer," Wagner replies. "She'll be fine." But they both know that's not true. The water is cold and dark. Natalie Wood is wearing a heavy coat and boots. Even if she survived the fall, she won't survive long in these conditions. Christopher Walken wants to call the Coast Guard immediately. Wagner insists they should wait, that Natalie might swim back to shore, that calling for help would only create a scandal. It takes 2 hours before they finally radio for assistance. 2 hours during which Natalie Wood drowns in the Pacific Ocean. Her body is found the next morning, floating face down in the water, wearing her nightgown and a down jacket. The official cause of death is accidental drowning. The official story is that she slipped while trying to tie up the yacht's dinghy, but Christopher Walken knows the truth, and Robert Wagner knows that he knows. In the days following Natalie Wood's death, Christopher Walken faces the most difficult decision of his life. He could tell police what he suspects happened on the boat. He could expose Robert Wagner as a murderer. He could seek justice for his friend. But he also knows what that would cost him. His word against Wagner's, with no witnesses except a boat captain who has his own reasons for staying quiet. A he said situation that would destroy both their careers and accomplish nothing except creating more pain for everyone involved. So Christopher Walken makes a choice that will haunt him forever. He stays silent. The official investigation concludes that Natalie Wood's death was accidental. Robert Wagner inherits her estate and continues his career. Christopher Walken returns to his life as if nothing happened, carrying the weight of what he knows. But the secret eats away at him. In interviews over the next 4 decades, careful observers notice that Christopher Walken never talks about Brainstorm. He never mentions Natalie Wood. He deflects questions about that period of his life with obvious discomfort. "There are some things that are better left in the past," he says when pressed. The mystery of Natalie Wood's death becomes one of Hollywood's most enduring conspiracies. Books are written, documentaries are made. Every few years, the case is reopened, usually generating more questions than answers. And through it all, Christopher Walken remains silent, protecting a secret that could destroy what's left of Robert Wagner's reputation, but wouldn't bring Natalie Wood back to life. In 2018, 37 years after the drowning, the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department officially names Robert Wagner as a person of interest in his wife's death. But by then, Wagner is 88 years old, and the statute of limitations has long since expired. Christopher Walken, now 75, still won't talk about that night. But according to people close to him, the guilt of his silence has shaped every day of his life. Since 1981, he carries something heavy, says a longtime friend. something he can't put down, something that changed him permanently. That's Christopher Walken's dark secret. Not that he killed Natalie Wood, or that he had an affair with her, or that he was involved in any way with her death. His secret is that he knows what really happened, and he chose silence over justice. Whether that makes him complicit or just pragmatic is a question only Christopher Walken can answer. And after 42 years, he's still not talking. The truth about what happened on the Splendor died with Natalie Wood. But Christopher Walken's burden of knowledge lives on, a reminder that sometimes the heaviest secrets are the ones we keep to protect others, even when those others don't deserve protection.